Okay, welcome back to the stream. Um, we've had a little bit of a break in terms of when we last worked on this, but let's get cracking and let's see what we can do. I set up a couple of goals for myself on the dev.to post, and that's just going to be the kind of process I'm going to be using from now on in terms of setting up the streams. Give it a little bit more structure, schedule them beforehand, plan some stuff out. Also, so people have an idea if they want to watch the actual stream beforehand or not, and then see how much we can get done. So the things that I would like to do are adding a loading bar. So I want to start with that, which is quite straightforward. I say loading bar, but it can be any kind of indication of the loading of our level. Because at the moment our prototype is still quite rough in terms of how it handles loading and things like that. So I really want to try and get that sorted out ASAP, so that I can really just not have to deal with the console at the moment just showing the loading. So I'm going to start with that. I want to add some basic camera controls, some basic on mouse click interaction. So if you click on something in our level, we can get some information back about that. That will give us a basis where we can start actually building an interaction system, some controls, which we're obviously going to need if we want to build a combat system and all the other kind of things that we need to do as well. And then also see if we can fix up the procedural generation a little bit. It's quite close to being where we want it to be, but what we really need is just to get our openings to align. So if we have a look at the Trello page over here, things we want to look at are controls, primarily the camera controls, and we also want to then add a basic UI. One of the reasons why we want a basic UI is just it's going to help us actually let me just add what I want over there. Help us keep track of what's happening within the game without having to keep looking on the console, keep doing debug.logs because they're quite computationally expensive. We want to make those, leave those out if we can. And under controls, we want to start adding basic camera controls. Probably WASD for movement, maybe Q and E for rotation, and mouse wheel for zoom. We'll see how that pans out in terms of the actual feel of the controls, but what I really want is if I run my game like I've been running it before. First of all, we don't have this level generation being running over here. We want that nicely shown on the screen. When I generate it, I want to be able to move around, because at the moment I need to go out of my play view, go into my scene, generate it first or display it first, go into my scene, and then rotate it around to see what it looks like, which is not ideal. So let's see if we can do some, I suppose you can call them quality of life improvements on the actual interface, which will also then make our lives a little bit easier in terms of actually debugging it. So the first thing I want to do is just fix this loading bar, or just add a bit of a loading bar. So this is not incredibly complex. And because we are just working with a prototype at the moment, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to work for what we want to do. So I'm just going to add a TextMesh Pro text field. Just import the essentials. And basically what this is going to be is just a basic little UI element. which will allow us to actually, let's just view it from the front. Give us an idea of the loading, how the loading is going. I'll put it in the top left corner, just because I don't want it to obscure the rest of my interface. We're going to call this loading. Let's just we won't use the drop shadow because the drop shadow is nice. Vertex color. One of the big things that you guys will very soon realize about me is that I like the coding part. The design part is not my strong suit, so we're just going to try and make something that looks decent enough. Just run that. A new text there is going to show at the bottom. So we want this percentage to show up there, and then once that's done, we want to be able to actually view it. So what we're going to do is we are going to link our level generator to our actual text mesh that we've created in Unity over here. To be able to do that, we need to create a public variable for that. And to be able to use the public variable, we need to actually import the Unity UI, which should give us the ability to create a new Text Mesh Pro Text Mesh Pro's U GUI object. We're just going to be keeping a namespace inside there, but that's basically this text mesh that we've created over here, and the actual text that we're creating, you will see, is Text Mesh Pro U GUI. There's different kinds of ones we can use, but that's fine. We're going to use this one for now. We're going to call this txt loading, so just know the text box that I'm working with. This is going to be on my level. I'm going to drag it over there and link them together, and then in update, well, what are we going to display over there? Well, the procedural generator is the thing that actually is generating the rooms, and that's the thing that we want to make sure is done before we want to do anything else, and that's the feedback we want to give to the user. So it's once again our generate initial structure, this I enumerator, which is the value that we are interested in. So we want to make sure that our current coverage is less than our loop, which is creating all the rooms, is looking at coverage, and we're looking at current coverage. So what we can do is we can take current coverage out of that method, add it over here, and make it public. We're going to then obviously turn it into a read-only property. It's a float, obviously. Keep updating it, so we're going to add get and set tis to our current coverage. We just need to set current coverage to 0 before we start our loop. And what will happen is we can keep asking procedural generator, what is your current coverage? Even though we kind of keep yielding out of this loop because it is a coroutine, we can still get that information in our level generator. So what we should be able to do, because we do have a procedural generator object that we can work with in our update method, we can get current coverage, and we can assign that to our txt loading dot text is equal to current coverage dot toString. Okay, this is just going to give us the current coverage. Okay, that's giving it as a fraction. What we can just do is multiply this by 100, toString that, add a percentage to that, and we've got a nice little loading option for us. We've set our desired coverage to 20%, so the moment we reach above 20%, we can display our actual map. So that's quite cool, which means we can take out all of these nasty debugs over here. We don't need them anymore. It's a minor thing really, but it should eventually, we want to move towards not having any debug information if we possibly can, because we want to make sure we don't have too many issues in terms of our actual code. At the moment, I'm still using the R key to render our scene, but what we actually want is our level. We want that once we've reached our desired percentage, we want that value to actually, or that rendering to happen automatically. So we can add some code to do that. And we only want this to happen once. So even though this is going to be in our update method, because we want to keep checking if this is true, we can't put it in the start method because the start method only runs once and runs before our first frame. So our whole game is going to be very slow if we're trying to generate a very big actual level. Also, if we're going to have to load a lot of templates, all of these load templates we're going to have to put into a coroutine as well. At the moment it's nice and fast, but eventually that'll be an issue. So what we want to make sure is that if our procedural generator dot current coverage is more than or equal to our desired coverage, and is displayed equal to false, so it has not been displayed, is displayed in this case will just be a boolean. So we're saying at the start, when we start of the script is displayed is equal to false. So if our current coverage is more than our desired coverage and haven't displayed it yet, we display it, and we just set is displayed equal to true, so that we don't keep running this display method. Let's run that again. And it displays it nice and easy for us. So what you'll also see is it's only generating it once. If I were just to take this is displayed out, so you guys can see what happens. And this is very important. This is one of those things that everybody kind of gets stuck on when you are coding, especially in Unity, is I'm doing something in update that I shouldn't really be doing in update. Now, I put this in update because it's the only way it's going to work, but I'm very careful to make sure this only works once. If I comment this line out, if I run it again, we'll generate it, and then what we'll do is it'll just keep over-generating, re-displaying millions and millions, maybe not millions, hopefully not millions, but really a whole massive amount of actual copies of all our prefabs, because we're calling display the whole time. So it's very important just to keep that is displayed inside there. Okay, that feels pretty good. We've got a loading little text over there. We could maybe add another loading text there later on, which is going to show us loading values from files, all those good kind of things. So that's one thing we can tick off our list, add a loading bar. Now, before we get to actually trying to get our procedural generation to really work properly, let's add some camera controls so that we can actually move around our scene without having to go into the scene view, because that's not ideal. We want to see what it's actually going to look like. So on our main camera, we want to add a new script to that. Okay, camera controller, let's just move that into the scripts. It's inside our, it's linked to the main camera. So let's just open that up. So the basic idea is, as I said, we wanted WASD movement to move the camera on basically a horizontal plane, the Q and E for rotation, a mouse wheel for zoom. Now there's a couple of ways in which we can do this, but the first thing we just need to keep in mind is our camera, if we look from the side, is at an angle, which is perfect because that's what we want. We want to be able to see the actual game at an angle. So we don't actually want to move the camera around if we can, because if we start moving in the various axes, that might cause some issues. We want to basically parent our camera to an empty game object and move that empty game object around. So I'm just going to create an empty game object. I want to call that camera controller object, just so that we know exactly what it is. And I'm going to pair my camera controller to that. I'm going to add the script to that. The actual camera controller script is not going to be on the camera itself, but rather it's going to be controlling this camera controller object. So let's just put them at exactly the same position. So the camera control object is over here, camera is also over there. We pair those to each other. The camera controller is now at 0, 0, 0. So if we move our camera controller object around, then our camera moves with that. Okay. Because our script is added to this, we can now actually edit our script. So what we're going to do is we are going to use very basic transform commands just to move the camera around. Let's just start with the WASD keys, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the input axes. So in Unity, I always forget exactly where this window is. Project settings, input, yes. So under project settings, under input, we can define a number of axes. We've got horizontal and we've got vertical, and that's set up to A and D, or left and right on the keys, and up and down, and S and W. So our normally WASD movement actually allows us, is already set up for this. The reason we use the axes is it's easier than hard coding it. Also allows the user, when we eventually build our game, to set up their own keys for this, for our axes. These we probably need to rename, but we're still just building a prototype, so that's fine for now. So what I'm going to do is from dot position I just always forget how to exactly do this. We want to update our current position with a new vector. On the X and Z axes, our Y axis needs to stay the same. So whatever current Y level we are at, we don't want to change that with the keys. Okay, that position remains the same. You can't change that with W, A, S, and D. Our X and on the X-axis and the Z-axis we can change it. So we can use A and D, left and right, for the X-axis, and W and S for the Y-axis. So this will be input dot get axis horizontal, American spelling, input dot get axis vertical. Okay, so that's all fine. Problem is that input might be quite low, so we just want a speed variable as well, which we make public so that we can't add to a vector. We can only multiply a vector by a float. So this speed value allows us to play around with getting a nice speed in the actual inspector. So this should give us up, down, left, right, or forwards, backwards, left and right movement in our for our camera. So let's just set the speed to 5. I'm guessing here, but I've played around with these kind of things a couple of times before, so 5 is generally a good speed for this kind of thing. And we get lots of errors. My Y position is set to infinity, which is really obscure. Hang on, it should be plus equals because we want to add the new value to it. We're not going to add any values to the y-axis, and we're still going to get those values and multiply them by the speed. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, 5 is a bit big. Let's make it, if we make it 1. Feels laggy, but our FPS is fine actually. This is not really that bad in terms of camera movement. We can probably even slow that down to something like 0.5 as well. That feels not too bad. Not sure why it feels laggy if we've got quite high FPS, but that's fine. This allows us to see a lot more of our map, which is nice, but we're still quite high up. Let's just add, and we can do it all as part of this. We can use the mouse scroll wheel. When you're working with inputs, it's always just important to make sure that you're using exactly the right names for these inputs. So there is a mouse scroll wheel, so we want that exact name to be exactly the same, and as far as I know it is case sensitive. Okay, our mouse scroll speed is a lot. And scrolling here, scrolling, and not really moving as much as what I would like. So, add a new float, which I'm going to call zoom speed. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to multiply my y-axis, my mouse scroll wheel, which is my up and down axis, by my zoom speed as well. And that we're going to make 5. This is just because of the amount of inputs per second that is picked up by something like a key press, holding down a key, versus scrolling a mouse wheel. We just need to play around with that a little bit. It could probably be a little bit better. Kind of have to ask ourselves at this point if a rotation is even necessary. This is more of a game design element, but the player might start losing track of what they want to do in terms of where they are if we keep adding rotation to it. It's really not that difficult to add, but it might just confuse the player. I just thought of something else I want to add to my list of stuff that I want to be able to do. So before I forget, we want to add a mini-map as well, which is UI. Just thought about that. That would be quite cool. If you are moving around the whole time, it would be quite nice to have an idea of what the whole map looks like. Let's just add the rotation, see what that feels like. Vector3 dot rotate. Transform dot position dot transform dot rotate. We've got a couple of overloads over here. We want to rotate around. Yes, we want to rotate around an axis, which should be, well, our game object, which is controlling a camera, can never change its rotation, so it will always be the same as the world spaces. But let's just say we want to rotate it around vector3.up. We want to rotate it by input.get axis, a new axis called rotation, and we should, we need another, no, we don't need another parameter over there. So we're going to rotate around the upwards vector, which in this case is should be our green vector over here. And we're going to rotate it based on this input axis, which is rotation. We need to add that axes. We can then just increase the number of axes, because this is just an array, to 20. We don't need all of these cancels. Actually, let's just make that 19. The last one we can call rotation. We can make it Q and E. Add some other positive and negative values if we want, but we don't really care about that. Let's just take the alternative options out. Q and E should rotate us. Let's make that E and Q. No. Q leftward negative rotation should be the negative. E should be the positive. We are probably also going to need to take this value and multiply it by a rotational speed. This is the one thing I get a little bit tedious about controllers, is actually setting up all these speeds and playing around and getting values that actually make sense. Let's try 5 again. Might be a bit high, but that should be fine. That's quite high. One thing that you'll notice now is that we are still only moving in the world space when we are updating our position. So we want to rotate according to space dot self. We want to rotate our entire actual camera. Well, am I doing it the wrong way around? This is why I don't like rotation, because we end up with these kind of issues. Should still be self. Our rotation speed is a bit high. We will fix that as well, make it 1. And what we're going to have to do is we're probably going to start having to start splitting up this big transform dot position, because we're going to need to add some various factors over here. Okay, let's split this up. hopefully this will work. It's really not what I wanted to do. Control X. Okay, and no. No, is it read only, isn't it? This feels very wrong to me. This might be the answer that I've been looking for a while now to actually get movement working. Of course not. Power of undo. Undo, very useful, obviously. Just try not to go too far. Nope. Rotation always freaks me out. I really don't actually like doing rotations of camera rotation, especially just always does my head in. So what we're gonna do for now let's try one more thing. If this doesn't work, we will just not have rotation for now. see if we can rotate the camera independently of. This has to be a really easy fix, but I'm just. Getting a little bit stuck in it. Let's just, for now, keep out rotation for now. We're not too worried about UI right at this moment, and this is probably something that there's a quite easy fix for. So they don't like leaving things unfinished, but I think I don't want to spend too much time fiddling around with this. We've got something which allows us to actually move around our scene quite nicely, our level quite nicely. We can have a look and see, okay, where is the entrance? Which we should have. It's not generating staircases. It's not a good sign. We're supposed to have staircases. Okay, this is something else that we'll probably just need to fix. But that actually leads us nicely onto the next thing that we want to do, which is to fix the procedural generation. We're still not really getting the kind of procedural generation that we want. And this is the reason why you prototype, because so often something will work once, we've got a staircase now, but it's not working perfectly. So we really want to just be able to try out. We've got something which is almost good enough, but it's not actually good enough. This is not going to be playable. And to force it into something playable from where we're standing at the moment, we've got these empty kind of islands. I mean, we've got interesting little effects and interesting little things that are happening, but it's still not really ideal. I don't mind if there are gaps, but the overlapping of rooms really loses the effect that we want to get from our level grammar. Our level grammar is quite stringent, but we're kind of throwing that out the window by doing this randomization of everything. So let's see if we can, even if we can't get it completely working, we can relook at our procedural generates and think, okay, how can we make this work? So our main idea of coverage is still fine. We want to start randomly. That's fine. We want to have an entrance that we can set. We want to use our room types, which we've set up as some, which should be in room. We've got our room types, which allow us to actually build this whole context-free grammar kind of thing, which allows us to build the right kind of rooms next to each other. But the moment we start randomly placing new rooms, once we've got no more space, that's when we're kind of running out of what we want to do. So what we kind of want to do is we want to keep building new rooms, and we want to keep placing them and we want to have our next position always be a nice logical next position. So we're probably going to have to kind of map this out in some kind of way just so that we can have an idea of what we're talking about. So let's use our, for lack of a better tool, let's use Excel over here. So let's say we've got a room that we start over here. At the moment, what our generation is doing is it's randomly choosing whether we're going to go horizontally or vertically. So that means we're going to have a new room there, either randomly, and then from there, it's always, over there, or a new room on top of it. And it keeps building up in this way. So we might have this kind of effect. So we get this kind of trailing effect, but we're never going back to where we've been, because we're always adding to our position. So what we never want to do is, the problem with just making this randomly choose between 4 options where we can also go negative is then sometimes if we have generated these 2 rooms, generated these 2 rooms, so we got a plus in height and a plus in width, which is great. If we then get a negative in width, we're just going to overwrite this room, and the rooms aren't the same sizes, so we're going to be left with bits and pieces. So we need to think of a way that we can kind of maybe do something more on the lines of this kind of almost spiral effect. Where if we still get a little bit of overlap, everything is still at least connected. There might be some gaps, but there won't be too many. But we get a little bit of a better effect of here. And because of our grammar, we should hopefully have things that are a little bit, that make a little bit more sense. So let's look at this option. So we still want, we're not going to need our next this is still our random rotation and generation that we've got. This is fine. This still works for us. I'll check for if our entrance check shouldn't need to happen, because we're always going to be increasing our sizes. If we ever get to the edge of our level, we're just going to have a smaller level for that one, which is probably fine. It will make a little bit more variety in our actual level generation. And we've set up that our random start is within 50% of the middle of the map. So you should have generally big levels to start with. So what we're going to do over here is we are going to keep checking if you've generated if the previous position where you generated was above, below, to the left, or to the right, you're going to increase the values accordingly. So instead of making it random, that we could probably pick a random starting position, but let's just not do that random for now. We are going to start in this kind of spiral configuration. We should still get random rooms, and they will still have random sizes, which should add enough randomness, but we should have generally better linked rooms together. Some of the rooms will still overlap, which still gives us a little bit of that dystopian, broken down kind of feel, but at least it won't be the current situation where we've got rooms that you can see. You have 3 of the same kind of rooms that just seem to have completely overlapped over here. Over here, you can't even see really what's going on anymore with these rooms. And the main reason why we want this is going to allow us to really fix our entrances and exits, because we want our player to be able to go almost anywhere within our room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate, I'm going to store, where's my while loop? I'm going to have a next room position. To really just make our lives easier, I'm going to create an enum for this as well. These are the kind of things where an enum, we can just use a direction for this. North, east, south. Sorry, north, east, south, and west, yes. We can use an enum for this. And we are going to set our value over here for next room position equal to direction dot north. Okay, and then we're just gonna have, well, we can really just use a case statement over here. I'm just going to comment these lines out for now, because we might want to just refer to them. But basically, we're going to have a switch statement over here, where we're going to switch on next room position. Add the actual code there. North, east, south, and west. And really, we can just change the height and the width. And it should only be one value. So start with north. If our next room position is north, well, we want to increase our height, and we want to set next room position is equal to direction dot east. Okay, just grab that little piece of code, and just update it. If it's east, well, actually we want to change our current width, and we want to make our next room position south. Z, we want to subtract from Z because we want to go down, and then our next room position should be west. Finally, if it's west, our X, we want to subtract, the width. And then obviously our next room position that we need to create is north. This is the kind of thing where you do it and you think you're being very clever, but you are not convinced that you are. Let's give it a go. Generation is taking very long because depending on where we start, might get something that's interesting. Oh, now that, doesn't that look a lot better? Something that's homogeneous. If we add a little bit more doors to some of our rooms, we've got little pockets of places that you probably can't get into, but that's fine. Question is, do we have a staircase? Yes, we've got a staircase. Okay, now we've got a level that looks a lot more interesting. Still not perfect, we're still overlapping because we've got some rotation, but honestly, this is pretty much playable at this point. We allow our player some basic ability to destroy walls or destroy rooms. I think it's fine. What you will see, what we just need to check, because we've got some overlap. So this is looking a lot better. I'm a lot happier with this. If we just have a look at this, you can start out here, you can walk down here, move those crates. If we allow diagonal movement, you can get in there, you can get in there, you can go this way around, go through these doors, go through that door, go up here, there's a little bit of a dead end, go through here, maybe sneak to that real weird door, that door. We make our doors bigger, add some more doors to our room templates, and allow the player maybe to destroy one or two rooms. We've really actually got a playable level system over here. Let's just check one thing, that if the moment we are inside or our level goes outside of the actual template, let's just break out of our loop. So we're not always going to get our desired coverage. That just depends on our starting position. Unreachable code detected, that's not a problem because we're not going to actually be using that anymore. We just need an exit condition there in case we ever get into our a position where we can't. And this one started nicely close to the middle, so we actually get a level that's not too bad. Still having staircase issues. It's fine, we'll fix that. Let's try again. I don't know why it's taking so long sometimes to actually generate levels. Something's still not perfect over here. we technically no, I know what went wrong. I know what went wrong. So what we're doing each time, we're just moving one block in. So we're making these 4 little block movements. We need to do this multiple times. If we just go back to our Excel, this is our template room. So we move up by 1, that's fine. We move right by 1, that's fine. We move down by 1, that's fine. At this point, I shouldn't be moving east again. I should be moving down again. 2 down, 2 right, and then 1, 2, 3 up. 1, 2, 3 right or east. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So every time we go in, I suppose you call it a right angle, we need to increase the number of times we need to go into that direction. It's interesting how you can write completely incorrect code and still get really nice looking procedure generated levels. It's actually quite interesting. So we're going to have a total number of rooms. As that increases, we are going to increase the number of rooms in sequence that we need. Number of rooms in sequence is how many do we put next to each other to create our spiral. So our little switch statements are definitely going to have to get a little bit of expansion here. So we're just going to add some brackets because we're going to have to add some if statements over here. This is the kind of thing that, even though it's annoying to kind of do, I find quite fun to try and get right. It's probably not the best indication, but whether it's a good approach or not to actual to what the problem we're trying to solve. But sometimes coding is just about doing what you enjoy and what's fun for you. So, you know, you don't always need to find the best solution, the most optimal solution as well. Very often it's also about learning about what you need to do. So we're going to need 2 if statements over here. The first one is to say how many sequences we need. This counts for all our rooms, so we can put it outside the switch. So if hard code this. I'm going to hard code this for now, and then see if there's an equation that we can use to calculate switch on num rooms. If num rooms is equal to 1, num rooms in sequence is equal to 1. If statement's going to be better over here. Okay, let's map this out. I really should have just kept this Excel file open from the beginning. Got room 1 and room 2. So the sequence that we have is room 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Seems more than enough. Okay, so those are room numbers. That's how the spiral builds out. If it's 0, we want 1 movement. Let's make that blue. If it's 1, we want 1 movement. Else if num rooms is bigger than or equal to 2, and num rooms smaller than or equal to, so it's no, we only need to sorry, we only need to actually change up at the corners. If it's 2, we want number sequence, we want 2. If it's 4, we want it to be 1, 2. So at opposite corners is only where we need to actually change up. This will make sense, I hope, eventually. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Okay. So at position 0, 1, 2, 6, 12, and 20. Not seeing a pattern over there. Which does mean that we can go back to our nice little switch statement. Actually, we don't need 1 either. The 0 needs to go to 1, there, 1, yeah. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm hoping there's a big maths fan watching this and they're going screaming at me watching this, because obviously not now, but afterwards going, why didn't you use such and such as algorithm? I'm like, well, I don't know it, but that's fine. My gut tells me there's a pattern here that I'm just missing, but we will need to expand this, because we don't want to hard code these values if we can. So number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the previous. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, so there's a pattern there. Let me just make a note of for myself here. So this at least gives us the pattern, we can easily work it out, but I don't want to get too caught up in this. What I want to do is now actually use my number of rooms in sequence within my next room positions. So if num rooms in sequence is bigger than 0, then please generate a new room for us. Else num rooms in sequence, hang on, and then subtract from that. If it's not, well, don't do anything. No, wait. Then we still want to keep creating rooms in the same direction. Else, we've generated our last room. We can set our new position to east. Okay. This feels like something I should be doing in a neater way, but just format this all nicely. want to keep going east. If it's still bigger than 0. Just paste those before we lose that out of the buffer. We want to keep going south, and in this case we want to keep going west. This is only going to change once we get to a new room. This should only subtract as many times as needed. Wow. This has gotten really hairy. Yay, we've got one room. Every time we add a room, we increase the number of rooms that we've added. I'm going to delete this because we're not even close to the ballpark of that anymore. Trying to reverse engineer back to where we were now is going to be completely pointless. So it's not even close to right. I think I've got an idea of what's going wrong. Whenever creating or moving our room the last time, oh, that's not what we wanted. So while it's bigger than 0, we want to move it. If it's not bigger than 0 anymore, we still want to move it once in terms of the position, but we actually just want to change the direction. This is the problem that I think is happening, is we're not generating these first little rooms that we start with. no staircases, and this only seems to work occasionally, which is not what we want. See, this should go up. Let's move the new start position by the X of the previous one. This is feeling really, really close to solution. There's something, it's just not. We never seem to be circling around. Copy that, remove that random generation. What did we say? 24. We're capped on the number of rooms we can create at the moment. So let's just see if that's maybe something that's causing problems. So this is, it should be going north and then east. That's not even doing that. I'm going to sequence start at 1 because we start with 1. Start at 0. My algorithm has gotten out of hand here. North and then east, 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 east. And then just stuff is skipping. And we're back to debug.log. So we've got north, north, east, 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 south, west, which is obviously very, very wrong. We want very basically north, east, south, south, west, west, north, north, north. south didn't actually have the new position code set in, which might not fix everything, but yes, well then we've created a absolute single entrance, and then our system has crashed. North, east. Okay, so let's just plot this out. Start at 0. Okay, so number of rooms is 0. Number of rooms in sequence should be 1. We've also hard-coded it to 1 to begin with, so that's 1, which means yes, it should be 1. So I was doing an extra 1 over here. That's still bigger. That is that bigger than 1 actually that we wanted. North, east, south, south, west, 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 west. Somewhere one of my directions has gone wrong. I think if it's north, keep going north until we're done, then we go east. If it's east, we keep going east until we're done, we go south. If it's south, we keep going south until we're done, then we go west. If it's west, we keep going west until we're done, then we go north again. This is super exciting stuff, guys. North, east, south, south, and then west screws up. Let's run it again and check, because every time it seems to be creating new interesting mistakes. North, east, south, south, west, north, east, east, east. Almost right. So we've got our start. X is this way. There's that way. Okay, so I just want to make sure that our camera is pointing in the right way, that I'm expecting everything. We want to go north, so our height should be increasing, so there should be something above it, so I don't know why that's... We've created this position. By the amount of width that this is, we start at bottom left corner, we need our new starting position to be over there. We should generate it, and then it should say, well, generate something to the east of that. I'm wondering if my rotations are screwing it up, but it really shouldn't be screwing up my other algorithm. Okay, so that looks good, north, and then east, and then we stop because we run out of space. North, east, south, southwest, and then it's breaking at the bottom of our little... So this is, I don't think, the problem. That's fine, randomness is fine, we can work with a bit of randomness. It seems to fail to get back after it's gone west, and if we're thinking about it, it's gone north, east, south, south, west, west. And then it goes north, east, east, east. Rooms is in the right place. When in doubt, debug all the things. Okay, so we start out with north, number of rooms is 0, sequence is 1. That should be this position over here, right. Then, starting out to the northeast, room is 1, sequence is 1 because we want to build 1 east, yes. South is 2. Our number of rooms in sequence is not really updating. Okay, why? We're decreasing them, which is fine. It should reset each time we get to because we're doing it twice. Okay. The other corners are important. I should really color coded this better, but gets to negative, number of sequence gets to 0, and then you should reset it to over here. Let me check if we can do this with the case state C#, multiple options in case. Okay, that works for me. Case 1, case 2. Okay, so case 0, case 1, you want it to move by 1. Are you going to let me do that? No. Oh, you are. Okay. Case 2 and case 4. Case 6 and case 8. Case 12 and case 16. And we're just going to stop here at 20. Okay, wow. Oh, goodness me. Let's see if we're at least getting our north, east, south, south, west, west. North, 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 north. Okay. Yeah, we've got too many norths over there, but we've got things still going wrong over here. This is the room that we've created. It looks like it's picking up the next. No, it's not the next room. The fact that we get these wonderful one-room levels shows that there's something quite wrong with my algorithm. North, east, south, south, west, west. Yes, and then it should be north, 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 and then north just keeps going on. Oh, north. East, south, mass bunks out again at some point. be 6 and 9. One, two, three. Sixes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will still save this later. That's really pretty. Okay, sorry. Gotta get our maths right. Gotta get our spiral right. North, east, south, south, west, west. North, 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 east, 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 south, 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 west, 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 west. And doesn't seem to be really going all the way around, but north, yes. East, yes. South, yes. That's probably south there as well, yes. Then we've got west, 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 north, 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 east, east. 3 east, that should be east, east, east. And souths, and then wests, and then all kinds of weird things happening. One. The number of times I've changed this from 0 to 1 is it should still be 1, should still be 1. That's fine. We had a staircase over there. We still get these jumps which don't really make sense. It's kind of sad if they're randomly generated. Okay, let's try something else over here. This is for testing purposes. I'm going to make them all elevators. See if they present in a nice little spiral formation. Oh, we got stuff jumping around like crazy, which is really not what should be happening at any point. Even the last room we generate should still decrease the number of rooms in the sequence. Right. Makes sense. Oh boy. North, east, south, south, west, west, north, 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 east, 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 south, 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 west, 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 north, 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 north. Okay, so my logic is working. It's just placing it in completely weird places. Start with random X and Y. We rotate. I think it might be our rotation that's screwing everything up. Yes. Okay, so our rotation is screwing everything up. Oh boy. Which is fine. And the problem is when we rotate it, our width and our heights bug out. See, this looks much better. We shouldn't have. We've got one up there, we go up there, we go down, we go round, we go round, we got some spaces, but we've got general movement, but no rotation. Since the rotation over there would have been nice. Rotation screws up our X and Y positions, our height and our width. Which is fine for when the rotation is actually placed, but when we are trying to figure out the next position, because it could be a very weirdly rotated room, it might be moved quite far away from where we were. width and the height are actually the other way around. Just swap them around so that when we get to generating our next rooms in our sequence, something went haywire there. So it really shouldn't be doing right over here because I'm not even. Let's just try this again. Not because it's going. Ooh, exciting. Rotation also means that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to cheat. We are not going to have multiple rotations. What we are going to have are templates that can be in different rotations. So because we're getting the width and the height from the actual room, the moment we try and swap that around or mess with that inside the actual engine itself, we get weird situations. Staircase, beautiful staircase. Keep losing my entrances and staircases. Just make them bigger. Make life more interesting. Still have overlap. Why do we still have overlap? The entire purpose of this exercise was to prevent overlap. Having weird gaps like this is not the end of the world. And the other option, of course, is we make each room exactly the same size, which is going to generate something that's really boring. Which is not what we want. Okay. to increase our so we can do some more. Let's make that 30 so we can generate a nice whole bunch of rooms. Once again, no staircase. Enormous playable rooms over here. I'm liking this quite a lot. No rotations, but we can add some hallways that are rotated in terms of the actual design in the file itself. And what we just need to do is figure out where is that now? Convert to an equation. So we can do this for any number of rooms that we want. I'm going to leave it at that. If we look back to what we wanted to get doing, we added a loading bar. That was easy. Camera controls easy. We fixed our procedural generation in a certain sense. It's a lot better. It's something that actually makes a little bit more sense. It's not as crowded. It doesn't have all the overlap. And if we run this on max and maximize play, we still need to tweak some of the edges of it, but we get some maps that actually look kind of cool. So once again, let's just grab a snip. And then that is what we're going to use as our thumbnail again. What we will do is we will try and just finalize a little bit more on the procedural generation. I know we've been spending quite a lot of hours on this, but we really want to get something that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun to play. We still have weird overlaps, but honestly, that's not the end of the world. If we change our templates a little bit, we will actually get levels that are going to be quite interesting to work with and to play with. This just happens to be a non-playable level at the moment, which is quite ironic, but we probably just want to add a little bit of logic, which is going to test and check how much of our level is accessible from our starting point, and if it's a decent enough amount, that'll be a valid level. Otherwise, we'll try and regenerate. So we might need to do multiple random generations until we get a level that we can actually work with each time. That's that for tonight. Hope that was interesting. We got a little bit stuck in the weeds over there, but actually quite pleased with the logic that we came up with over here. We've completely changed our procedural generation algorithm actually, but it is giving us something that still looks random enough, but has a definite structure to it. Um, we probably just need to make sure that we move our starting point a little bit closer to the center of our oval level so that we've got rooms all around it the whole time. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys will join next time.